Welcome to Modern Wisdom with Dawn Ricci. I'm Dawn Ricci, a spiritual mentor, healer, psychic, and medium. My podcast is all about empowering you with spiritual insights on health, wellness, relationships, and careers. Join me and my guests as we navigate life's twists and turns, sharing wisdom and expanding knowledge together. Hit subscribe now to stay updated and never miss an episode. Welcome to Modern Wisdom with Dawn Ricci, where we explore the spiritual side of health and wellness, relationships, and careers, all while keeping it real through life's wild ride. And we have had such a wild ride lately, for sure. My guest today is going to tell us about some storytelling. And I just love her because I'm here telling you my story and my thoughts. And that is the best part about having a podcast. So she loves to help us tell our stories. And she is a serious firepower when it comes to messaging and storytelling and personal truth. Her name is Barbara Mannino, and she's a content strategist, a storyteller, and a speaker with a powerful mission. It's to help you become visible, credible, and profitable through the power of authentic storytelling. Barbara was a journalist in the fast-paced world of global finance, and she also came from mainstream press. She worked behind the scenes from some high-stake campaigns for Fortune 500 giants, and she co-authored The Law Firm Revolution. She also contributed into a variety of books and resources that helps entrepreneurs improve their performance. What sets Barbara apart, besides being kind and a beautiful spirit, it's her incredible gift and the ability to see the story within the story. She senses the spark within you, and that turns information into transformation. So whether she's on stage or on the page or coaching clients one-on-one, Barbara brings insight, humor, and a contagious energy that reminds us that our voice is our power. Barbara, hello. How are you? So good to see you. And thank you so much for sitting with me today. I am going to dive right in because we have so much to cover. All right. So we have so much to talk about how our story becomes our superpower. I really want to start with the background of journalism because that is such a hot button issue right now. But
yes, indeed.
It is. Oh my God. What did that journalism world teach you about people and about truth and power?
So first of all, it's great to be here. And second of all, I love journalism. I have written for the global financial press, the mainstream press, and even a little county newspaper that came out weekly. That's where I got my start. Journalism is exciting because it touches everything. Talk about curiosity. You could go around with a notebook, which I did. There were always stories to find. When I was a financial journalist, I scooped the Wall Street Journal once because I had developed such a good relationship with one of the companies I covered. And when they were having a name change, which was a big deal because they were a household name.
Right, back in the day.
First, right? So that was great. What does it tell you about people? That they're all different and yet the same. As a journalist, you speak to people at all levels, and I certainly interviewed many company chairmen, big companies, MetLife, Oxygen Media, Cendant, Standard Insurance, the list goes on. And so you run into different personalities, some who are very human, others who are a little more staunch, some who are even menacing. But at
Mm.
the end of the day, especially if you keep covering a company long term, and if you follow a situation long term, uh, you see people in all their colors. You see them at the height of their confidence. You see them at the depths of their disappointment. You see them strong. You see them vulnerable. And deep down, I realize that we all have those same emotions that run the gamut from happy and confident down to sad and feeling not quite as confident. It's a real study in human nature.
Yeah, and you're probably a master observer.
Ah, we used to, as a married couple, my husband and I, particularly when we were first married, used to go to a lot of rock concerts. And we would go with our friends, other couples, and inevitably someone would say, there she goes again. There's Babs. She's got her virtual notebook out and she's looking all around to discover the stories of all the people out there. And that is true. You know, I would look at them and I would think, I wonder what their story is. Hmm, they look so in love. I wonder if they're just married. I wonder how they met. They don't look so happy. I wonder what didn't make their day. You, no stone is unturned. You
I
really
love that.
hard at everything. It's very exciting. You know, journalism is a business also of commitment. And that is something else I should say about it. If you've worked, when you've worked in a newsroom, you are really in the trenches because even if you're covering a story, the reporters and editors around you, everybody knows what's going on because in some respects, they're connected, if only by the concept of what's happening. Similar things may be happening in a number of companies. And when you're in the trenches and really have to get that story, I do have a story.
Go ahead.
I said to a very menacing CEO,
Love it.
and now, Henry, let's talk about that hostile takeover attempt. There I was, face to face with this menacing, somewhat cantankerous CEO. And my finger was bleeding like a sieve because I had been reviewing my notes on the train and I got such a deep paper cut, it wouldn't stop bleeding. And he was not a happy camper. I could have exited stage left, but instead I mustered up my courage and my deepest voice. And I said, Henry, how about that merger? And I not only got the story, but I got to do a profile on him in our magazine. And I covered the merger for 9 months. And at the end of the merger, when his takeover attempt went up or down in smoke, I was one of a very small number of reporters who got to interview him. And he told me that. And he said, because Barbara, you were tenacious, you were honest, and you were fair. And I respect that. So you're getting the story. But you know what the real win was? The real win was not all of that, although that was part of it.
Yeah.
Real win was that day in the conference room when I could have exited stage left, talked in a squeaky voice, looked like I didn't have confidence. I stayed my course because I had to get that story. And
And
sure,
your finger's bleeding.
well, he gave me a band-aid. He
Oh,
did,
what a great
begrudgingly,
guy.
but he gave me one. I ended up really liking him a lot, and he certainly liked me a lot too. He respected me, which
Yeah.
is very important. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny. So, the way that spirit worked that day where you had this cut on your finger, you could have just, like you said, you could have just exited and say, oh, and use that as an excuse. But no, your energy and your tenacity and your powerful little firehouse person that you are, a little fireball that you are. And let me just tell you, viewers, I met Barbara in person. She is little. Like so
Damn,
if
I
she's talking to you, she's like talking to you, pointing up and talking to you. And so for her to take on a big, huge, powerful executive like that, and for her to get that respect, you must have been the size of Superwoman, like the biggest. You had showed your cape and you showed what you were. And that is amazing and good for you. And I
Yeah,
love that story. That's
it's a
great.
great story. And my son, who you would enjoy very much, he's got a great personality. He's funny as all get out. He happens to be a voiceover talent.
Uh,
He has a great voice. And he would occasionally do a mom imitation of me when I got either nervous or scared or something. And my voice would go up a few octaves, and he did it lovingly, totally lovingly. And I would laugh because it was funny. But deep in my head and my heart, I said, that's got to go. I haven't heard that small voice in years.
Good.
I
I think
haven't
a lot of
heard.
women are that way. That brings up a really, really incredible point that's going to lead into, how we all tell our stories. We don't tell our stories with a small voice. We should never tell our stories with a small voice. We have to be the powerhouse of showing who we are, because that's the authenticity.
Yep.
For me personally, my story, but I've led a really incredible life being an investigator and being on TV and having, all these, like we had a couple of shows and reality shows and things. And it was really great. I didn't realize how much we actually did until we stopped. And then I started looking back. And for some reason, I never really took it as like being a powerhouse. I don't know what happened. I don't know why, but I stepped back from all that. I think I just got burnt out. But my stories are now so flooding back to me every day. Like there's something that I must have pushed away that comes back to me that I use now in either my speaking or in my intuitive, in manifestation programs. Like you also said something, and I'm just going to skip into this because you said something when I asked you about being the observer. Immediately, you are so intuitive. Being a journalist is being intuitive, knowing what the next question should be and knowing where that probe is right there. Like even a subtle voice or a subtle action, you knew that big executive, you knew how to get under his skin enough for him to like tell you the truth and tell you it all and keep getting you to come back. That was
Yeah.
awesome. Right. So you
Tell
are
you
intuitive.
something. Throughout 9 months, when I followed that story, and one of the analysts on Wall Street at the end of it, he said, Barbara, it was one hell of a ride, wasn't it? Well, yes, it was. But whenever I called, his PR people, his press people, pretty much gave me an open introduction to him, which
Good.
is it's about respect. And something you said ignited something in me. It resonated. You said when you were living it, you never really stopped and thought about it, how great it was, all the things you did. So that to me is part of a story. And it's the part of the wonder of a beauty of a story. Because when you start looking harder at everything around you, think back to your own life, relate one thing to another, you discover these stories. And when you start playing them either in your head, writing them, telling them to others in your speaking, sharing them. I always want to say sharing, not telling. You become an audience to your own stories. And the more you share them, the more you listen to them, my theory is the more delighted you become in them. and you become so animated that you become a natural magnet for people. But at the same time, and that's what we hear about story, that it's a connection, totally is. But it is also a force of empowerment, because you get to look back and look out and appreciate so many aspects of your own life. The cool thing is, when you were actually living it, you were just going out into the world and showing up with a natural energy that's all yours. And that also is magnetic. It's just such a wonderful, joyous continuum. And I don't want to come across as a Pollyanna. That isn't really a bad thing anyway. But honestly, there's so much strife in the world right now, and
Yep.
so much bitterness. And if each of us took some time to reflect and look into ourselves and around us every day, we would find the good. We would find things to be grateful for. We would find things to stand up tall and feel 10 feet tall about. And if you think about it cumulatively, that's got to contribute to a better world.
Yeah, well, it's whatever you send out into the world. That's manifestation and intuition. It's whatever you send out to the world, you're gonna get back. If you're sitting around being angry and pissy and doing all the, throwing out bad energy to people
Yeah,
and whatever, if you're doing that, it's gonna it's a mirror. It's coming right back to you. It's
absolutely.
coming right back. Sooner or later, the universe turns its little head around and points it right back at you.
I love to talk about the universe as a person. I, not too long ago, wrote some wedding vows for someone,
Oh,
this very good friend of mine, and how this couple met. It should have never happened geographically, et cetera, et cetera. And not only did they meet, but they ultimately discovered that they were from the same island in the Caribbean. And
oh
they
wow.
ended up getting married. And there was a phrase I gave him: if you believe in such things as the universe at work. She was very busy that day. And I do believe, I love to look at the universe.
Oh my God, I love that. That is I love that. And just that sentence really told authentically how you really just allowed him to stop the world that's all full of noise,
Yep.
right? Because our world is full of noise, that authentic storytelling. And how, if someone's listening today that really, wants to start writing their own book or their own thoughts or their own story, whether it be good, bad, and, victim or whatever, indifferent, but how can we stop the noise to get down? What tips maybe could you offer on them to get it down on the page and just starting?
Well, that's perhaps the first rule. Just start it. How many times has a thought come into your head, or a feeling that you wanted to express, and you even think for a moment, hey, I should write it down, and you don't? And
Yeah, I'm
then,
totally guilty of that.
right, all of us, it's
And then you
lost
go back and you go, what the hell did I say?
at, because it's never the same.
Oh my God, I had such a good idea. What was I gonna do?
I don't know about you, but I get a lot of good ideas in the shower. And I have always said I should keep a notebook on the sink, because so when I step out of the shower, I should write it down or keep my phone there rather than reaching for the face and the body cream. That should come second. But the first thing is to start writing. So maybe if you're not, you haven't been writing in a long time, maybe it's a jotting, or like a journaling, where you write words that come to you. You see a flower, it evokes some emotion in you. you write the description down. So you get trained to observe, to look out, and to record it.
Huh.
When you get past that, then you do begin to look deep into yourself, find your gifts. What are you really good at? And finding those gifts is often a function of almost talking to yourself or with a good friend or even a therapist, talking. You would be surprised what comes out and how you begin to see then the thread. What thread runs through all that? What characteristic did I show when the chips were down? And you begin to understand who you are. When you start understanding that, you also then need to give some thought to, how do I think about the world? How does this me, who I am, think about this crazy, noisy, strife-ridden world, And you start developing a philosophy. These are things that you might not think of on a regular basis, but they were always
Yeah.
there, right? You're
Yeah.
just tapping into them. And I can almost guarantee that if you do that, you will find themes and threads and ahas and lessons that apply to your life, that apply to your business, that apply to both, that apply to parenting. The list goes on.
Oh, yeah.
And
I really,
exciting.
yeah, I really believe that because, and then some people like even I'll just use my clients for example, because, they'll come in and as much as I bring them up and give them hope and what have you, a lot of them feel very small and they don't feel that their life is important. Not that they're, God forbid, suicidal or anything, but they just don't think their story is important or what they experienced was important. Well, of course it's important because it's your story. It's your life. Your life is important. And all the things that God, source, spirit, whatever your lifetime is being handed, whatever's handed to you as an experience for your lifetime, you have to take that and run with it. Good, bad, or indifferent, or whatever's happened, you have to take it and run with it, whether it's divorce, whether it's, a car accident, whether it's, losing your job. Take that experience, write it down, figure out why this has happened. Is there a pattern there that maybe you need to connect the dots? Like you said, there's a thread there. Oh, wow, this happens like every third year. I got to change my job because all of a sudden I'm not liking where I work and the people I work with. Well, why is that happening in 3 years? Okay, well, I'm figuring out that I have a problem with interaction with people and boredom, or what have you. So it's stories, writing down our stories is fulfilling, it's healing, it's releasing any common blocks, common obstructions in our life, in our world. And when you feel that you can really be honest with yourself, and I think this is where the change in me happened. But when I felt like I could be really honest with myself, is when I was ready to talk about my stories. Hey, if you haven't already done so, check out my website at dawnricci.com where you can book your appointment with me. If you need expert guidance in finding your own spirituality or maybe thinking about getting back on track with health and well-being, then let's get to it with customized mentoring programs for your personal development. You can find all the information you need at dawnricci.com. Now let's get back to the show.
I think honesty, that's very interesting. You mentioned that word. I think that's true. And I also wanted to comment on the people that you say come to you and they don't think their story is worth anything.
Yeah.
The story doesn't have to be sensational. A personality doesn't have to be so extroverted. The key is authenticity. The key is you're acting from your true self, from your true nature, and that becomes compelling. You're centered, and people feel your vibe, they feel your energy.
Yeah, and your story, no matter how big or small, is going to help someone else. The
Yeah,
minute that you put it into reality, it will help somebody else. And I mean, that's why people post on, social media and this and that. But yeah, it really will help somebody else. So it is very important. And like you said, it doesn't have to be like, so sensational. It could
no,
be
it
anything.
doesn't have to be Hollywood fare. As a matter of fact, some of the simplest, quietest stories are the things that um, capture people the most. I
Yeah.
I look at my life now after all these years of writing stories in journalism, then moving into consulting work and representing big companies, campaigns in big companies, and writing about those. And now having the opportunity to work with people to make them the heroes of their own story, if you will.
Yeah.
Um, it's after doing that professionally for all this time, and at first when I went out on my own, even being a little intimidated because everybody's writing to you, telling you what to do, and everybody seemed to have MBAs from Harvard, and I thought I'd well educated, but how can I compete with that? And then I realized I had the greatest gift of all because I started studying story, and I realized what a wonderful tool in my toolbox. It's at the base of everything. So essentially now I look at life through the lens of story. And as a result of that, it
Yeah, that's
changes
amazing.
everything, changes everything.
Yeah, that's amazing. Um, what makes a story unforgettable?
It so it has to have a component that draws people in. So usually structurally at the beginning, you set the context and you present a situation, typically a problem or a quest um, that draws people in.
Huh.
Then you start taking the people on that journey, the ups and downs of getting there, until usually with the help of a guide or a Sherpa, whatever you want to call it, they get what they want. Their pain is relieved, their problem goes away, their hopes and dreams are fulfilled. So it's that thing. I think of it kind of a bit like a mountain, or
Yeah.
a bit like a
You're on an emotional roller coaster with their story.
you are. And
Yeah.
the way it's an art and a science, and it's really based on being clear. So, in a story that's compelling, that stands out, you only want to tell the most important elements that move the story forward, that move it in an uncluttered fashion from point A to point Z. That's sometimes, and and in doing so, you're telling a story where you're not just talking about events, but you're talking about the motivations, the emotions behind those events. You're talking about things that inspired or motivated or encouraged certain behaviors. You are not telling a story that's like, and then this happened to me, and then this happened to me,
Yeah.
and then this happened to me. That is not a compelling story. It's a
Yeah.
story that typically ends up being more focused on you, told the other way with the ups and downs, with the sense of the deeper emotion, not just transactions and events. You draw people in and they begin to think, oh my God, she's talking about me. I can relate to that. Something like that happened to me. Uh, it is truly amazing how people become part of your story. And that is what makes the story good. Years ago, my mom, who was a true dynamo, um, was well into her 80s, and she came to live with us with some trepidation.
Mhm.
She had been a widow for many, many years, had been very independent, went back to work, worked till she was 83. And when she retired, it was about the year after she retired, she became a little bit dependent. We thought she should come live with us. She was very cantankerous the day of the move. She had a cane and she was waving it all around. Put this there, put this there, put this there. And when
Oh God.
I, and if you knew
Barbara's like, oh my God, what did I do?
exactly, and I know she was thinking, what did I do? So at the end of this move, she said, well, I think it's time for us to all sit down and have a drink. So we kind of formed this circle where Ross, my husband, Keith, my son, I don't think our daughter Meredith was around, and me were here. And she was holding court between these two strapping, adorable, so nice 20 somethings. And she was holding court. She was telling stories. She was in her element. And they were laughing and they were sharing stories. I think they were looking upon her as a grandmother or an Auntie Mame for anybody who knows that reference.
Yeah.
And by the end of that experience, I realized that it was all going to be all right. We had not made a mistake by joining forces, that it was the right thing to do. So that was our family story. It was on a moving day. It involved parent child's adult children relationships. But honestly, if you think about it, it evoked the emotions of any leave taking. You're leaving your home to get married, to go to college. You're an older person and you're giving up your cherished home,
Yeah.
downsize. You leave a job that you loved because a new job makes sense because it's really something you'd love to do with more responsibility. All those stories are about leave taking and how we feel when we leave something precious and move on to the next passage. And so that story could evoke any of those emotions in any people, told well, with sentiment. I gave you a rather brief version here,
Yeah.
but
I think that
right.
you just made me remember something. I actually took a memoir class a
Uh,
long time ago. And I remember, I had to go, I had to go home and like we had to write chapters and this and that. I remember one particular chapter I wrote about being a little kid and going into my across the street neighbor's garage because I really, really liked his little red engine that had the pedals, that you could
I
sit in.
remember those. Yeah, yeah, I know
So
those.
you could sit, right. So it was Todd's, Todd's little engine or whatever it was called. And so I remember writing a story about that. And that was like a really nice memory for me doing that. But then I had to drop out of the class because I didn't have a really good relationship with my mom. She's passed away now. And of course, when that happens, you kind of forget all the bad and you just want to remember the good. But well, I don't know. I don't know about that either. But anyway, so but anyway, so I had to drop out of the class because I was like, oh, this is like digging up way too deep of stuff. I'm like, we're just gonna have to wait until she passes away or something for me to like pick up where I left off. Because there's no way I could have like finished it. So you just made me remember that. I don't even know if I still have the notes.
But
Yeah.
see, isn't that interesting how, I mean, that just goes to show the connection. It's
Yeah.
quite lovely when those things, you evoke those memories, you evoke those motions that you somewhere under the surface.
Yeah.
It's quite, it's quite
Yeah.
lovely. It can make a day.
Yeah, and I actually remember writing a chapter about Sundays with my dad because we used to go to the pancake house, and then he used to be he actually used to be a master plumber, and he used to do Fenway Park in Boston. That was one of his ongoing jobs that he held the account for. So as a little kid, we used to go to Fenway Park, check on the jobs, and then we would go get the car wash. And I remember going through the car wash with my father. And I wrote that as a chapter. And you just made me remember that. That was like really special. Thank you.
Well, I'm very cool. Maybe you'll pull it out.
I know.
Mhm.
I gotta go find that now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've moved a lot since then. Goodness knows. I hope so. But that's like really cool. Well, like everyone, there are great stories everywhere. I want everyone who's listening to just think about that. You have a great story to share the world. You are the most incredible human being to share that story. Don't doubt it any differently. No one's ever going to know if you don't share it. Someone else isn't going to, you're not going to help somebody else if you don't share it. And everyone has a story, and they're great stories, and no one's is better than others. So that's that was the goal of our episode today, because it's just so special to have listeners, or to have people as my listeners, but to have listeners like really take a hold of what I'm trying to portray, or what I'm trying to give you is something else that you can use in your life today, this week, this month, this year, and take it away and start writing things down, journal, start just feeling more important about what you have to offer the world. And curiosity, one last point, because I really wanted to touch upon this, Barbara, was we mentioned it really early on, was you have to remain curious about your life. And when you remain curious, I want you to elaborate, when you remain curious, I feel that other great things are going to come to you, and it's going to unfold, and more good things are going to come to you. What do you feel about that as
Well,
a
first of all, yes,
storyline?
it's a domino effect.
Yeah.
Curiosity is a wonderful thing. Uh, and it requires you to almost have antenna and just be so in tune to everything that's going on around you. Um,
That's one of my little secrets of manifestation. Get your
well, there
antennas
you
out.
go. It's so,
Yeah.
so important. You learn more about, you have interesting adventures, mini and large. You meet new people. Sometimes they're people that you think you're not going to gel with, and you end up thinking they're fabulous. You learn something new. You learn about yourself. I heard someone speak about a week ago, man who was 70, and I mention this because he made a point of being 70. He owns a very successful business in one of the towns around where I live, and he's in a business networking organization that I'm a part of. And he was the speaker one day, and he's Cuban by ancestry, and he talked not so much about his business, but he talked uh, about being a little boy and escaping from Cuba, coming to the United States, eventually meeting his wife, who he thought was the most beautiful woman in the world, and she became his life partner. They've been married 45 years. She's almost 70 now, too. He said, I don't just love her, I have a crush on her, which to me showed me that there was still excitement in their relationship.
Yeah.
He then talked a little about his business. He showed us some of his craftsmanship, but you knew you wanted to buy from him just because of who he was or is. He was passionate about life. He was passionate about his family. He was passionate about his business, his work. He had gratitude for all of it, even the down periods. He could find value in even the difficult times.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when we do business, when we form friendships, we gravitate um, towards people because of who they are, not what they do, not what they're,
Right.
not, you know, the work they do, not the status that they have, but who they are as people. And curiosity is kind of the base of all that
Yeah.
because it enables you to look outside yourself. And you just have to pay a little more attention than you normally would. And all this cool stuff comes in. And as it comes in and you store it in your own mental file cabinet, you'd be surprised how you find all the connections. You find threads that again contribute to stories or just help you form a view on life. There's an American author named Nancy Duarte, and she said something that I liked, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but she said, "The future is not a place you go. The future is a place you create." What a powerful statement. What a
Absolutely.
positive statement.
I
What
love
a
that.
way of saying, yes, we all have a story that matters. It's who you are, who I am. It's our you-ness, and it's unique. And we should
Yeah.
luxuriate in it. Really
Oh my gosh.
luxuriate
Absolutely.
in it. And you know what else? It
But
makes you comfortable in your own skin. And I want to tell you, this is my belief. And I take this a lot from my mom, who was quite sensational. When you're comfortable in your own skin, fabulous just is.
yeah, I love that. Love that. Oh
Barbara
my gosh.
Mannino
It's
is
so true. Wow, this was like amazing. And it was just amazing to have you here and just to really, dig deep, a little deeper, right? A little deeper into figuring out what we need to do to better ourselves and how our storytelling is really part of that. And you are a magnet to help people to tell their story. So I would love for you to tell people how they can get in touch with you. And yes, we're going to put it all in the show notes and everything. I know you have an offer for them.
I do.
So please tell us how we can get in touch with you and tell us about the offer that you're going to be giving them so they can tell their own story.
Yep, yep. So my email, which as you said will be written,
Yep.
is Barbara, traditional spelling, not like Streisand, Barbara at barbaramannino.com. Mannino has two N's in the middle and one at the end, Mannino, barbaramannino.com. And if you use the slug story, I will know that you're reaching out to me as a result of this podcast. And I would be happy to send you my PDF, which is called the Story Seekers Checklist. Uh,
Cool.
9 questions to uncover your most powerful stories and or business stories. So this works for you whether you're evaluating your life or whether you're growing a business. It works in either situation. And by the way, very fine line, if any line at all, between life and business. But this gives you the opportunity, it starts you on the path of self-reflection. And once you get going on that path, you might find that it's hard to stop. It might be a magnet that draws you in. And these 9 questions are some very good ones that will cause you to pause and think of some of the important elements which would contribute to help you write your own story.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you so much. Barbara, oh my gosh, we're going to have to do lunch again.
Ah, my God, we have
3 hour lunch. Yeah.
I know we were there for 3 hours, I might add, through several cups of tea, as I recall. People, I John will put a calendar link also.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
anyone
absolutely.
would even like to connect and have a chat on the phone and discuss story, strategy, and all of that,
Yeah.
it would be my pleasure to
Good.
talk to you all.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
And
having me. This was
everyone,
great.
this will please take Barbara up on her offer. It's a great offer. I think I'm gonna have her send it to me too. I gotta look for that book. And I'll see you all next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey there. So before we head over to the next episode, I wanted to let you know about my show named Beach Bench Medium, and it's on my YouTube channel. As I passed by beach benches that line the boardwalk, I felt the nudge from Spirit to bring family members to their bench and give them a reading. If you have a bench dedicated to someone you lost, then get in touch with me at hello@dawnritchie.com. I would love for you to be on the show. Thanks for listening.